Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Leanne Kenny. I am the Member Engagement Lead at Nominet. And it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you all today to our first quarterly members call with our Chief Executive, Russell Howarth, and our Chair, Mark Wood. And we also have some other Nominet colleagues who I've also dropped in just in case there is anything that they can add to the discussion as well. So as you'll have seen when you entered the session, we are recording the session and we'll post it on our Vimeo channel, which is available to members to access with a password. So anybody who's not able to join this afternoon will be able to review that recording there. So please don't make any private recordings. They're not necessary. This meeting is for members only, and it's not for publication more widely. So just to reiterate, we are recording it. There will be that recording available in the usual place. So please don't feel that you have to make any recordings yourself. It'd be great if you could pop your cameras on, and if you want to actually add anything to the discussion, to make an intervention, please do use the raise your hand button, and I'll be checking that, and then I'll invite you to take yourself off mute and come in and make an intervention. So the first thing that I thought we could do is, obviously in the registration form we asked for your views regarding member engagement and what good looks like to you, and it would be great if we could hear your views first of all on what engagement really means to you. Do you have any experience of engagement with any other organisations? Do they do things really well? Is there anything that we can learn from that? Because I think Russell and Mark in particular would be really interested to hear your views on that. So we're going to do a round robin. There's about, I think there's about 10 or 11 of you, so I think we've got time to come to everybody. So I'm just going to come round to everybody, ask you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about where you're from, and if you've got any views on member engagement and where we could possibly do better, or if you've got any experience of really great engagement that we can learn from. So I am going to come to Lee Kitching first. Hi Lee, how are you? If you could just take yourself off mute, introduce yourself, and just give us any views on member engagement, that would be great.
Okay, hi, I'm Lee. I work for Unlimited Web Hosting UK. I basically, I don't really have any views on member engagement. I think what you do already, Leanne, yourself, and I think Suzanne as well was in the engagement program. You both do, outstanding stuff really compared to a lot of other organisations. You guys are obviously out there doing stuff, trying to engage your members with, like your tea mornings, your coffee mornings, stuff like that. Before COVID times, you had all the events and stuff. I think that's really good. I don't think that, well, unless I'm missing something that everybody else knows about, I don't think anybody else is really doing stuff like that, especially sort of in the UK. I mean, there's lots of conferences and stuff abroad, but there's, not a lot over here. Maybe WordCamp or something like that comes close, but for web hosting, domain name type businesses, there's not really a lot over here doing what you do, and I think that's really good. The only comment that I would have with, obviously maybe member engagement isn't the word for it, but, like the community forum that you had, which obviously got taken down, was quite a good tool to have, which obviously isn't there anymore. But yep. Whether people, I read it, but I didn't really communicate on there, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So, maybe more stuff like that. Obviously, you've replaced it with Zoom calls now, which is perhaps a good way to go. I don't know. So.
Great, thank you, Lee.
Yeah,
thanks
you've done a good job.
Well, thanks for your kind comments. It's absolutely fine if people don't want to go into you know, how great me and Sue are. Very happy to hear it. But if you've got any other comments, we're also very happy to hear those as well. Kelly, can I come to you next, please?
Hi, my name's Kelly. I'm head of marketing at Namesco. I was also until recently on the board of Nominet, in case any of you don't know. I mean, I've pre-board, I've been here in this company for 12 years. I've never had a problem engaging with Nominet. I just ring them a lot, whether that be support or my account manager, just ring them. I think what would be good is if we can find a way to facilitate the discussions that affect us all, the common discussions, because we've never had that in a really constructive way. And it's the things that we all struggle with that aren't commercially sensitive. The common issues, technical issues, you know, daft stuff like when you took automaton off us, which okay was rubbish, but you know, the new API, how we could do data checks, because humans are great but they make mistakes, and policy, and you know, yeah, our industry is now part of the critical national infrastructure. You know, what's coming up that's going to affect us all. So much more of the, you know, they impact Nominet, but they also impact us as a channel. And we've never yet found a constructive way that was, you know, specific to stuff like that. And I do, you know, for me personally, a discussion would always be better. It's just the type of person I am. So yeah, something like this that had topics, I would find a lot more helpful.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kelly. Paul, I'm going to come to you.
Hi.
Hi, Paul.
I'm Paul. I do web hosting and domain names as self-employed. As far as the engagement is concerned, I mean, I think it works well at the moment. I think maybe it's just a case of people feeling like they're heard, while still understanding that just because they're being heard doesn't mean that it will go exactly how they want it to go, and that other people have opinions as well. So I suppose it's just a sort of a two-way communication to make sure that happens, really.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Paul. James Tuplin, hi, how are you? You're still on mute.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Hi, James.
I apologise for that. Hi, everyone. So yeah, my name's James Tuplin. I'm a domain investor, and I'm also the Director of Operations for Bodis, which is a domain parking company. So yeah, in general, I would say I'm happy whenever I call Nominet. I'm also happy with all the events that Nominet organise. The only criticism I've got really coming from kind of a domain investor standpoint is very much, I feel like the communication between myself speaking to others at Nominet events or across the phone is often lost. So there seems to be kind of a lack of transparency somewhere, whereby I'm happy when I get off the call, but there's no transparency as to the level where my grievances has actually been taken. So this is really the first chance that I've had personally where I can kind of air my comments to both Russell and Mark. And when I do so across the phone or at a Nominet event, I have no idea really how far my comments have actually been taken, and you know, what is the kind of next step on from that, really.
Okay. Yeah, that's a fair point. So maybe there's something better that we can do in terms of, because obviously it's part of my job to bring those conversations back into the business. So there's, you know, maybe there's something more that we can do in terms of making sure that we feed back to you guys about what's happened with your
Yeah,
comments and who they've been fed into.
Yeah, because it's just, and I don't mean to kind of come across as complacent, because in general I'm really, really happy with Nominet. But yeah, it's just whenever I have got an issue, there's just real no feedback as to who my issue has been told to.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that, James.
Okay.
Really helpful. Dan, can we come to you? Hi, Dan.
Hello.
Hello.
Hear me?
I can.
Yeah. So I'm Dan. I run all the domains. I think, from my point of view, I think Nominet is very good at the low-level engagement, which is what you guys do, and the events are usually on the point. I think for me the main issue in terms of engagement from Nominet is at the board level. And it feels very much that the board, there's a huge disconnect between the board and the members, and I think that's the real problem that needs to be resolved. I think operationally the engagement is fantastic, and the operational management of Nominet is fantastic. It's having the engagement on policy and direction and that kind of thing between members and the board that is where there's improvement needed.
Perfect. Thanks, Dan. We'll probably get some feedback from Russell and Mark on that when we've gone around the table. Volker, I'm going to come to you.
Yes, hello, long time no see.
Hi, how are you?
I'm pleased to be able to make it to this call because that's my first point. This is already a spot of bad planning because it's conflicting with the ICANN meeting and specifically the registrar stakeholder group meeting, which luckily is on a 20-minute pause right now, so a break right now, so I could attend both. But otherwise, I would have had to choose, and I think a lot of our members are also ICANN accredited registrars, and therefore scheduling against an ICANN meeting is always unfortunate.
Yeah, apologies for that. That's my fault.
Yeah, I'm not making a big accusation out of that. It's just an observation, and it worked out fine this time.
Well, we're very pleased to have you, even if it is only for 20 minutes.
Second point, I lament the loss of the forum, but I think that ship has sailed for obvious reasons. That's something that was probably not going to come back. I'm just thinking that we probably need some form of exchange for members where Nominet is also involved, maybe as an observer, maybe as just a reader of where members can exchange themselves about issues that they perceive, and as a form of an echo chamber. When I was on the board of Nominet, the forum was a useful tool for me because it helped me identify certain issues that I wouldn't have seen immediately or as quickly as I have with the forum. So that was a useful tool, and let's see how that can be replaced in another form or shape that's more civil, maybe. And finally, I forgot to introduce me at the beginning, so sorry for that. Volker Greimann, Head of Legal and Policy at CentralNIC Registrars Division.
Perfect.
So
Thank you,
systems,
Volker.
Hexanet, Internet BS, what have you. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Carl, I'm going to come to you. Do you want to take yourself off mute, introduce yourself, and tell us your views on member engagement? Hello. Be great if you could introduce yourself to the rest of the members on the call. Nope. Okay, Rex, I'm going to come to you. I know you don't have a camera, but do you want to take a minute to introduce yourself and tell us your views?
Hi, I'm
Rex.
Rex Wickham from 2020 Media. We're a registrar that's fast growing at the moment, but it's been around for 20 odd years. A Nominet member for most of those. I'd quite like to know how the board see what the role of members is themselves, actually. I think we've got quite a wide view from the members who are here, but I'm also wondering what the board see members as today, as the way that engagement has been done with members over the years has changed quite a lot. The kind of transparency and information that we used to get from the boarders seems to be on a downward, an always reducing basis. Thinking of things like board meeting summaries and that kind of thing, the information that is available now is minimal to say the least. Yeah, I would like to know what the board members who are here think. It's a shame there's no non-executives, especially elected non-executives, as they are elected by us, and it'd be nice to hear from them sometimes.
Okay.
That's it from me.
Thanks, Rex. Great question. So I'm just going to go to the next couple of people to get just invite them to introduce themselves, and then we can put that question to Russell and Mark. And you know, this is the first call, and they will happen quarterly. So obviously, if we do have any suggestions for how we can develop it moving forward, very happy to hear them and see if we can deliver that. Definitely. Right, Alan, I'm going to come to you. Do you want to take a minute to introduce yourself? So Alan can't speak, so that's okay. Hi, Alan. We all say hello. At least you can hear us. That's great. Cyprian, can I come to you? Do you want to introduce yourself to the rest of the group and just give us some of your views on what good member engagement looks like?
Just to quickly pop in, we've had a few technical issues. He's on chat.
Oh, he's on chat.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So if you've got any views on that, Cyprian, we can read those out in a bit. Right. I am going to. So thank you, everybody. I think we've done everybody. There's quite a few people on the participant list. So I am going to come to Russell and Mark. We did have a question, or rather a comment on the registration form about that somebody had said that they'd actually really like to hear what the board think is good engagement. So I'm going to put that question to Russell and Mark just for them to sort of talk to us a little bit about that, and also maybe to address Rex's question in terms of the role of members as well. You know, Rex has been a member for a really long time and obviously seen the organisation change. So I'm going to put that to Russell and Mark. Mark, I think you're off mute already, so do you want to go first?
Sure. A couple of points on that. Well, also, so picking up Rex's point about board summaries and so on. I mean, first of all, the board is very conscious that this is a membership organisation, and we have 4 elected members there to represent the membership as well. So it's never far from anybody's thinking, and we do follow very closely the engagement programme with members, and I've attended a few events, and I know other directors have, and we are kept very well briefed on it, and we're very conscious of what Leanne and Ellie and other members of the team are doing, and I think that's very important. The problem about providing board summaries and so on, I mean, it's something we can think about again, but the fact of the matter is that Nominet has just become a larger and more complicated business, and is involved in a lot of areas which are commercially sensitive. We've diversified the business partly to strengthen it and to ensure that we've got a strategy to grow and survive. But that's particularly involved growing our cybersecurity business, and it means we're part of critical national infrastructures in the UK and elsewhere. And there are a lot of the discussion around this is not something that we can publicise too well. So there are constraints on how much we can make available. I think when there are issues, I mean, when we have issues around pricing, and when we recently had debates around drop catching and so on, we try to make sure that membership is informed and briefed and has its say. But we need to, I mean, one reason for having these forums is to make that kind of communication more regular, so that we can pick up things and note where we need to be more informative or pay a bit more attention. But I think I'd like to hand over to Russell and let him say a few words, because I think he'll have a broader view.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. And just from my perspective, thanks to those that have joined today. And it goes to part of the answer to the question, really, which is what I'd like to do is engage with a broader group of members. And as many of you know, we've got a large group of membership, over 2,500, and I think having a better representation of member views across the spectrum of membership, be it large or small, helps us to engage with the community at large, to understand some of the issues and frankly, how we as a registry can support you as businesses. And I think that's sometimes has been a challenge for us, because there's a very small minority of members who perhaps aren't representative of the feedback we've gotten from this group that have dominated a lot of the discussion. But actually what really good looks like is broadening that discussion to more voices across those membership, and hear how Nominet can engage with you on helping you be more successful as a business on the one hand. So thinking things like co-marketing initiatives and other promotional activities we can look at on the one hand, but equally on the other hand, understanding more about some of the dimensions of what's happening in the industry and understanding where we can be engaging with you so that Nominet can adopt policies that are going to be favorable for you and for us as we go forward. I think some of these perhaps discussions, if I'm frank, have been somewhat challenging in the sense that there's been a bit of a conspiracy theory as to what Nominet's been up to, and we genuinely aren't trying to hide information from you guys, so we can have a constructive engagement about some of the decisions and we're tackling on things like drop catching, which is the most recent example. So I think what good looks like to me is what we can do to engage you on areas of policy around the domains, and frankly, make sure you're also understanding what we're doing as a business. As I've said a number of times, we are not a not-for-profit. We are a for-profit business, limited by guarantee. And so some of the aspects and the kind of grounding, if you will, of what Nominet is and what it's not, I think needs to be reset as well. So we're all moving forward from the same position. And the reason why we're trying to be a profit with a purpose business is because we actually think it's a really good thing and really unique in the tech space. So, as I say, we are trying to diversify our business, and cybersecurity is a major focus for us. All of what we do is centered around the 3 pillars that we've laid out in the past, which is around increasing connectivity, inclusivity, and security. And we're very proud of what we've achieved. And hopefully as a member, we involve you in those discussions more and more about why we're in cybersecurity and what we're doing in that business area and how much impact we're having on the millions of people that we're helping to protect. Because I do think actually Nominet has got a great opportunity here. On the one hand, we're helping the business be around for the next 20 years as we have been for the next 20 years as we have been for the last 20. And that requires a bit of diversification of the business. We aim to have a positive impact on all the areas that we move into. So for example, cybersecurity, we are protecting 1.4 million public sector employees. And I think that's a good thing that we should be really proud of. And public benefit that we've been promoting and pushing, and actually been really having a tremendous impact as an organization on the target of positively impacting the lives of 1 million people. So I think, for me, we'd like to share more of what we're doing on those areas. So we've got more engagement and frankly, a bit more support and engagement and enthusiasm about some of the positive things that Nominet is doing. So in terms of the question that Rex asked about the role of members, I think the role of members is to really engage with Nominet on, we don't have to always agree, that's not the point, but having a constructive dialogue about where we're seeing the industry move towards and how Nominet and members can work together to navigate some of those opportunities and challenges would be a great discussion. And, you know, we'd love to have more of those discussions. I think the point around, can we have more Zoom-based points around, you know, very specific discussions around topics that you're interested in? Of course. I mean, that's the whole point around how we can engage with you and how we can collectively facilitate dialogue on policy or issues that are going on in the domain industry. And I see here that Cipriani says, so you don't like criticism. That's absolutely not the case. What we're trying to do is engage with people on the expectation that sometimes we won't agree, but let's at least have a positive debate. And to that point, I think the conspiracy theory point I mentioned earlier on is where this dialogue starts to go off track. If small minority of members believe that you know, Nominet's constantly trying to do things which are not in the member interest, and I think we've got a fundamental disconnect at that point, and I think that's a really unconstructive way to engage on both sides. So I'd like to use this opportunity really to engage in a really positive and constructive way, so we are listening to you and we're responding to you, and also that we're helping to address some of the opportunities and challenges. And just my final point is, you know, we're at a time, probably like no time before, where certainly in the UK and I know beyond, we are reaching a point where the UK is trying to tackle some of the headwinds of COVID. And many of you guys are at the front lines of helping small, medium-sized businesses get online, deal with the challenges of being online. And I think there's a great opportunity for us to work with you to help tackle some of those really systemic challenges that the country is facing, not just the domain industry. And you guys are at the front line of that. And if we can help and work together, then I think we've got a real opportunity.
Thanks, Russell. Right, I'm going to come to Dan. Dan's got his hand raised, and then I'm going to just come to James, because James has put a question in the chat, so I can read that out for him if he doesn't want to say it. But first of all, let's come to Dan.
Thanks. So I just want to pick up on a couple of points there. So I thought one thing which Mark said I would like to expand on a little bit is, you said that the diversification was partly to strengthen the organization. So I mean, as far as I'm aware, previously that's been the whole justification for diversification. So what other aspects are you seeing as the reason for diversification, if not purely to strengthen the income of the business? And I think then to just come with some of the points that Russell said. So I think the aim of broadening engagement with membership is very important. I certainly don't want to be, you know, in the same 10, 20 people always being the people having to raise points with Nominet, and I think it is really important that we get a diverse input from the whole membership. But I think part of the problem that has to be acknowledged is one of the reasons that many members don't engage is because they don't feel like they're listened to, and they don't see any return for the effort of that engagement process. So part of that is frankly the failure of Nominet to show that they are actually taking this input on board, providing proper feedback to the limited opportunities to engage and provide an opinion that then needs to be returned back and say, right, well, this is what you guys told us, this is what we're doing about it, this is why we're not doing that. That kind of thing would help everyone understand and feel like their voices are being heard. And I think that also ties then into the conspiracy comment is, you know, I think the best way to squash conspiracy theorists is radical transparency. And, you know, and if the information is there, if the information is out there so it can be seen and it's not in a black box, then you can't come up with theories about it other than outright, you know, accusations of fraud. It's just there, that's the fact. And you have to then accept the fact and move forward. But when it seems most of the activity is often shrouded in conflicts or that kind of thing. It leads to those questions because it's the only logical answer people can draw from the information available. I also think that I would probably take a view that the not-profit status of Nominet is stronger in my mind than I think it's probably in the board's mind as well. I think, from my understanding of it, while I wasn't there, Nominet was founded on a much stronger foundation of operating as a business solely to run the namespace and not as a commercial entity. So I think that is, it looks like the attitude of the board on that aspect of Nominet's organisation has changed significantly over this 20 years, and I think that's a big source of discontent with the membership, who much prefer the older interpretation of that.
Can I comment on that, Dan? Because I think you've touched on something that is really important, which is if the cornerstone of the discontent on membership is founded A, in a few people, but B, on the premise that we want to go back to the old days, then I think that's a useful conversation to have, because with the best respect, we're not going to go back to the old days. We're moving forward, not looking backwards. And so I think that's a really important point to try and level set kind of where we're moving on from, because there's been membership conspiracy theories and points of view that have been kind of thrown in from the side for way before my time. So I think trying to get to the bottom of what is causing the element of discontent would be a really good place to start.
Thanks, Russell. Mark, do you want to just respond to Dan's point regarding diversification? Hang on, you're on mute.
Apologies. Yes, I want to compliment Dan on his backdrop. It's making me wish. Dan, as on the point of diversification, I don't recall I said that in that way, but let me just focus on diversification. As Russell said, this was a decision taken quite a long time ago, before my time, that we wanted to diversify the business. And a major reason for that was, and remains, to strengthen the business, anticipating that our current revenue streams could change and that we needed more diversified revenue streams so that the organization could adapt as markets change and as business changes. And you can't chop and change on that. You can't be sort of half pregnant with diversification. If you start diversifying the business, then you're on a journey, and we couldn't just stop now and say, well, actually, we don't want to do this diversification. We are providers of, for example, of cyber security defenses to governments. This is an important part of the organization now. And I have to say, the way that Nominet has diversified is, I think, ought to be a source of pride to all the membership. We are defending governments, and particularly the UK government, against cyber attacks, and doing it extremely efficiently. This is an organization which is performing extraordinarily well and is very well managed. And you get that by having a commercial culture we treat Nominet at board level as if it were a regular FTSE company. We agree strategies and we demand performance from the executives. And we expect the business to grow and for profit margins to grow, because that's the sign of a well-managed business which can handle all kinds of crises. It's a membership organization with no appetite to grow would probably not attract very high caliber people over time. You wouldn't have the strength of the team that you've got in Nominet. It's a different beast altogether. So I think we've embarked on this journey, and it's working very well. And we still have profit for a purpose. The funding of tech for good is admirable. I was called by somebody this week who advises a couple of international governments to ask about the Tech for Good projects that Nominet is funding, and to say there were, and he said they're some of the best he'd seen anywhere in the world, most effective. These are sources of pride. This is a well-run organisation, and I think, as Russell says, this debate was had many years ago, and we've embarked on a journey. The result of which is that I think we provide a much better service to our members and our customers, which is what we want to do at the heart of what we do. So yeah, I think diversifying is strengthening, but it's also creating a strong culture and a very strong management team.
Thank you, Mark. Ellie, I'm going to put you on the spot. Rex has just said in the chat, obviously as a long-serving member of the team, that he'd like to hear your perspective on the change that you've seen from Nominet of 25 years ago to now. You're on mute.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for pointing out the time frame. I'm
not far behind.
I think Nominet as a company has evolved considerably over that time, and that's absolutely appropriate because the broader environment in which we sit has continued to evolve and change. It's really important that we keep pace with that, keep pace with members' expectations, registrars' expectations, the broader stakeholder community, and I absolutely agree that you do have to keep looking forwards. Clearly, the domain registry is absolutely at the heart of what we do, and even when you look at something like our cybersecurity products, that the genesis of that was from protecting the .uk registry, and what we learnt from the need to protect .uk then was something we identified that could evolve and become a commercial product, and ultimately, from that we've moved forward into the PDNS and the protection of UK public sector. So that very much came out of the learnings that we had from the registry business. I think that's so very important that you don't stand still, but also from my perspective, running the registry, it's also, I think we take that incredibly seriously, and we try to be very careful in terms of how we do that. So we don't run that simply in the interests of one particular stakeholder or group of registrars. We run it very much, with a view across all of our stakeholders, which is why when we develop policy, for example, we don't just go out and ask members their perspectives. We really try and encourage a really diverse range of stakeholders to engage and give us their views. And similarly, when we're looking at things like promotional activity or co-marketing and those kind of things, we're genuinely trying to find opportunities to provide ways for different types of members and registrars to get involved. It's a really broad church. People have different perspectives, different areas of focus, different customers they look after. And so, things like the work we do around the UK domain and the education aspect there, but also the spinner that we operate, which, we've seen some mid-tier registrars be really successful because they're fantastic at converting customers. And so, when we're looking at the registry business, recognise it's a broad church, recognise we have to really make sure that different stakeholders' perspectives are taken into account, but also, from a commercial perspective, run it in a way that is appealing to across the board.
Thanks, Ellie. Right, I'm going to come to James's question. Mark, this is probably one for you, but Russell, chip in obviously if you want to. So thank you for waiting, James. The issue that James has is that the members elect the non-execs, but they have no insight into what they actually do and if they're working in the best interests of those that voted for them. They get voted in, but that's the last we hear of them. What they do and their beliefs in the boardroom may be the complete opposite to what they claimed in their application video. I don't know whether, Mark, you wanted to explain a little bit about the role of the non-execs, the elected directors on the board.
Sure, I can assure you that, and everybody, that the elected directors are very, very conscious of their responsibilities to the membership, and always act in that way. And they're a very good reference point when there are discussions, which are at every board meeting around the core business, about developments and issues which will affect all the membership. I don't see. I'm quite surprised that there's a sense that these discussions are held behind closed doors, because ultimately it's the role of the management to communicate what the organisation is doing. And I thought, for example, with the drop catching debate, Ellie and the team engaged with the membership, and there were very fierce and emotional positions held on this by many members taking different positions, and the challenge was to navigate a way through, which I thought was managed well, and ultimately, you know, the challenge was to reach an outcome which was never going to please everybody, but was fair, which is, I think, what happened. So, I mean, I'll take on board the comments about how do we communicate more. As said, it's not always easy. Boards, well-functioning boards, can only really function if a lot of the discussion is held in confidence. Otherwise, people become nervous about what they say, and discussion dries up. That's not a good board. A good board is where people speak out. And our board is a good board. We have very, very strong independent directors, and we have very, very good elected directors. I mean, Kelly, who's on this call, was on the board for about 3 years and could talk about the way it functions. And she made an enormous contribution. So I think, you know, part of having these Zoom calls is one reason is to try and communicate a bit more. But the elected directors can't independently communicate what's discussed at the board, because that breaches the way the board functions and breaches board confidentiality. That said, we can find a way. We'll look at ways to ensure that we are communicating key themes.
Great, thank you, Mark. Okay, I am conscious of time. We've got 5 minutes. So if anyone has any other questions or any other comments, now is the time to raise your hand. I'm just going to sit in silence until somebody fills it.
Can I raise a question?
You can. Go ahead, Mark.
Can I ask James Tuplin here to elaborate? He made a comment about having no sense if grievances were being followed up on. And I just wondered if he could give us 1 or 2 examples of the sorts of things he meant, because I thought that was an interesting comment.
Yeah, so just in general, I guess kind of coming from a domain investor point of view, is very much kind of to do with the whole kind of drop catching debates, the UK ROI, also the new proposed way of releasing domains. It just seems to be very much when we have comments on these matters, the decision is one which is out of our hands. We give our input to this, but it just seems from kind of a domain investor standpoint, rightfully or wrongfully, that Nominet's going to do whatever they want to do. Now, I'm not saying that's correct. However, that's the viewpoint that many domain investors has. And I can kind of, I guess, share some insight as to why that may be. So kind of, I believe Rex brought up a point about the whole not-for-profit side of Nominet. However, as kind of a domain investor myself, all the changes in Nominet seem to be one of increased pricing. So increased registration costs, proposed auctions from Nominet, which are obviously now not going ahead. But again, it seemed to be from a domain investor standpoint, that was another way for Nominet to receive more income. And then I also heard on a previous call that there was a proposed cost of £600 per connection in the proposed way that domain names would be released. And now this is going to be increased to 1,000. So it just seems that everything seems to be for profit and also against the domain investor, and more towards the larger corporations, e.g. the registrars.
Okay, thank you. That's thank you.
Thanks, James. Ellie, do you just want to comment on the expired domains, and then I'm going to go to Paul, and there's a question in the chat.
Yeah, sure. So, James, I don't know if you know that we've got a webinar tomorrow around the expired domains thinking. So we've kind of indicated a direction of travel, and probably rather than go into all of the detail further today, if you're able to join tomorrow, that would be really, really brilliant. I mean, one of I've said it several times, but and I take the points you're making. This isn't driven from a kind of making money or revenue. This is trying to find a way to avoid unintended consequences of making changes to the current system. But we can talk through all of that in a bit more detail tomorrow. We've kind of got a thinking around direction of travel. What we would really, really value is input from people who are in the drop catching community secondary market for the kind of where are the unintended consequences, what is it that you know that would actually should influence how we implement the changes that we think are the right thing to do, but it's there's lots of still outstanding kind of operational detail that we're really keen to get input and thoughts on.
Thank you. Paul, I'm going to come to you, and then the last question is going to be from Cyprian on the chat. Paul, you first.
Going back to the non-execs, is there some way that, although not everything can obviously be discussed because you say it's commercially sensitive, but is there some way that members could know in advance if a topic was going to be discussed that might affect them, so that we could then talk to the non-execs and give our opinions that they can then bring to the board as part of the discussion? Because it tends to be that you hear about things after they've been discussed rather than when input could be given.
Thank you, Paul. Russell, Mark, any comment on that?
Let me respond to that immediately. I think that sounds
first hand on buzzers, isn't it, this one?
Yeah. Sorry, Russell. I was going to say, I thought that was actually rather an interesting idea. Let's take that away. Russell, I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's a really constructive suggestion, and to the extent there's something. But what I would say is, on the policy side, I think the policy team do a really good job of trying to flag where the options are, and I think the drop catching was an interesting point in time, because there's a view that we've come up with a conclusion before we've actually got the input, and that's actually genuinely not the case. So I think if we can engage with folk on the policy direction and get inputs on that, and then I quite like the suggestion, if there's big topics that we've not put out to policy but actually might impact the domain communities, then it's a good idea to potentially flag it to you guys in advance, so you can have a chat with your elected NED.
Yeah.
Right.
Excellent.
Thank you, Russell. Okay. Last question. I'm not sure you're going to be able to answer this one, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Following this year's NED election, do you feel the right candidate won? Do you have any plans to change the voting rights or requirements?
That's for me, isn't it? I guess well, I don't think we accept onto the board the directors who've been elected by the membership, and we have so far had very good experience with the outcome of the elections. We've had very good elected directors. Changing voting rights or requirements, no. I have a constant concern that we have a very low turnout in the vote. Less than 10% of the membership votes in these elections, which means that ultimately the successful candidate is being elected with only a handful of a percent of the whole membership. And I think we want to give some thought to how do we engage the broader membership more and try and get them to take part in the election so that we have more representation. but no, apart from that, no, it's just to try and encourage people to take part.
Thanks, Mark. Okay, I'm conscious that we're 3 minutes over, but David Thornton has got his hand raised. David, do you want to come in and very quickly say something? Hi, David.
Hi, can you see me okay?
Yeah.
Good. I just wanted to say, as an elected NED who's been on the board 5 years, people do email me, people do contact me, members do, and they still can. They can find my email address, or it's online, or it can be got from Nominet. And if they want to approach me directly, they're welcome to. And I'm happy to, within reason, go into details on things. Obviously, I have confidentiality requirements, but I'm happy to discuss these theories that people have and try and put people's fears at rest or at bay. You know, I could go on and talk for hours if you want, but I know we haven't got the time right now. So any member who wants to contact, get my email address from Nominet. They can email me or Skype me, whatever you want.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that is everybody's questions asked. Everybody's hand. Well, Paul has still got his hand raised, but yeah, he's taken it down. Okay, so it only remains for me to say a massive thank you to everybody for joining us today. Brilliant suggestions, lots to take away. So there's lots on my action list from now on. So we will obviously send out details regarding the date for the next quarterly one. So thank you to every one of you for joining us, and all of the Nominet colleagues too.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I just think that first of all, thank you all for joining, and secondly, we did say would host these once a quarter in addition to the regular drumbeat of member engagement webinars and communications that we have. So if you've got any thoughts or topics that you'd like us to cover on the next CEO chair, then please let us know and we'll throw that into the mix. Really, it's your time. So we're trying to steer the discussion, but really this has been some really helpful suggestions. So thank you.
Can I just briefly add to that? I thought we had some really good suggestions in that discussion. So thanks to everybody, and stuff we will discuss and follow up on and come back to you on. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.